Hello. All right, here we go. Good afternoon. I'd like to call the Finance, Audit, Tendering, and Administration Committee meeting to order Wednesday, November 27th, 12:06. Order of business, open session. First item is called order. Called order, it's good. And second is declaration of conflicts of interest. Are there any declarations today? No declarations. Number three, approval of the agenda. So moved by Councillor Bernard, seconded by Councillor Yankoff. Before I go any further, I'd like to welcome, if I could, Alana Yankoff to the Finance Committee. Welcome, Alana. Great to have you on board. Been around the council chamber a long time, and look forward to working with you and having you on the committee. Welcome. So again, approval of agenda, we're fine. Okay, so moved. And number four, approval of the previous draft minutes of October 30th, 2024. So moved by Councillor Bernard, seconded by Mayor Brown. We're moving right along. Number five, business arising from the minutes. SURF, additional information. Mike, you're on here. Did you want to step up and?
Happy to, Mr. Chair. So I understand there were a few questions that came up at the last committee meeting. Staff are still trying to get some additional detailed information on the legislative piece that had come up, specifically how the MGA relates directly to the proposed realignment of their corporate structure. So we'll provide further detail at a future meeting to the committee. I guess I would reiterate some of the information that was provided at the last meeting as far as where this came from. The understanding was that some of the activities that SURF has been providing over the past number of years, because the accommodation levy is covered under the MGA, that SURF should be following municipal policies and procedures. So like I said, we'll provide additional detailed information once we have some clarification around those specifics.
Thank you for that, Mike. Any, we're good on that? All right. Thank you, Mike. Did you, I'm sorry, I didn't see it. Did you have a question, Councilor Bernard?
Ready to go.
Oh, yeah.
Michael?
so-
I know that DCI, Downtown Charlottetown Inc., has an incorporated body, correct? Kerry, where we have the Bell Alliance Center has a incorporated body. And I believe Charlottetown Civic Center, the Eastlink Center, that's an independent board. So we're not going into a new area. It's just, you're trying to formalize this so it's a separate entity, but with representation from the city on the board and also ex officios, correct?
That's correct.
So 3 members, voting members on serve, and 2 ex officio, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bernard, to Mike, I believe. Yeah, and it's just on the surf conversation. And I know that they're coming back with more information, I guess. For me, and I did reach out to Christine McKinnon with the province, and she's going to get back to me on if we're in compliance with the MGA or not, if we can leave it. The only thing I would say is if we incorporate, and I'd be no problem incorporating, as long as we can, in that incorporation, we can still have our 2 voting members and have the mayor still appoint a chair. If that was possible, then the incorporation would probably be a good thing. I just don't like to see us lose that voting rights that we have on that committee. So anyway, she will get back to me on that. So that's coming to another meeting anyway. So that's fine. So, yeah, so Mike, on Councillor Bernard's clarification or request or wish, is that possible?
Yeah, maybe just to clarify through the chair, the proposed shift that was brought in the previous report would still result in the city having voting members on SURF. But to your point, if the direction from council is that you'd like to have the existing members remain as the voting members, that's something that we can explore further if, again, we have that direction from council.
Okay. The only thing is, Mike, but from the notes that I read, it was that the voting members for the city would move to ex officio. They would not be voting members.
The current members would move to ex officio positions, and they would be replaced with appointments by the city
Voting,
That are voting.
voting.
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Again, 3-2. 3 voting, 2 ex officio. Now, the Kerry board, we appoint the chair. That's in their bylaws, their constitution. I believe Councillor Bernard is asking that we still have that role to play as one of the 3 voting members to be chair. Yeah, that's what he's proposing.
Yeah, and like I said, that's something that we could explore if we
Yeah.
have that direction from council.
Okay. I'm a little confused now. So will we have 2 voting members on it, or will we not?
We'll have 3.
But 3 altogether?
Yeah, and 2 ex officios.
If we incorporate?
Yeah.
That's what's being proposed currently.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Chair?
Thank you. That,
Chair?
oh,
just ask Thanks.
Councillor Yankoff, go ahead.
So, but you mean the 3 that would be potentially voting if this comes to be are the 3 that would be appointments through the mayor's office through each of these representation. We wouldn't have actual voting members that we have existing now, which would be, that's what would change. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, are we good on?
No, because I'm still a little confused. So we can still appoint who we want to be the voting members. So that could be the people that are there now if we want it. Is that correct, Mike? We're appointing them, correct? You said that the city will appoint voting members. So we can appoint who we... To be on the board, be city representatives.
through the chair, again, just to clarify, the 3 appointments would be city appointments, but they would come from the tourism industry, according to what is
Yeah,
being
okay,
proposed
yeah.
right now.
Yeah. So that's what I'm looking to change. It would come from the city the way it is now. The city would, that's the voting rights that, that's right, yeah, yeah. If that could happen in the corporate, great. If not, and we're allowed to keep it the way it is, then I would rather keep it the way it is.
We can certainly take that feedback back and have further discussions about it.
Okay.
Again, this is not to muddy the waters. Currently, we have 3 members on the board. We have Emma McKenzie, representing the city, correct? We have Wayne or Laura Lee.
Through the chair, your worship, that we do have 3 members currently. One is from the tourism industry at large, which is Emma McKenzie. And then the individuals who hold the positions of manager of economic growth and attraction and the event management and tourism officer are the other positions,
That's you
whoever
and
holds
Laura
those
Lee.
positions.
Right. But those 2 roles, those 2 positions would become ex officio, correct?
In the new proposed incorporation.
Plus 3 members from the community, from the tourism community, appointed by the city.
So currently, the city has 3 appointees in the existing structure.
Yes.
2 of them are internal, and 1 is from the tourism industry. And we hold votes internally today.
Right.
In the new proposed structure, the city would still hold 3 appointees to the board, but the 2 staffers would become ex officio,
Yeah.
and then 3 appointees from the tourism industry at large.
Yeah. Much better deal.
Okay, no more lights? We good? Yeah, thank you. So moving on to item 6, discussions, reports. 6A, the 10-year tax incentive by CADC BioAlliance report, manager economic development. I guess, Wayne, do you want to take us through this?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The report is in your package. I will start off by saying that this particular item has been to the Economic Tourism and Cultural Development Standing Committee, who signaled their support, and thus it's here at Finance today. And if there's support, it would then move on to Council. The staff recommendation is that council would enter into a 10-year agreement with the Charlottetown Area Development Corporation, who in this case is representing the BioAlliance Incubator, and that is because of the way the incentive is structured, and the incubator itself is owned by CADC, and therefore they are the landlord to the BioAlliance with respect to this particular project. It would be for a temporary graduate suspension of municipal taxes. If supported, the agreement would include modified terms with performance metrics and benchmarking at years 3, 5, and 8. And some of those metrics would be built around job creation, investment attraction, and sectorial growth. The percentage formula would be maintained as it is today, a 90% contribution in year 1 and a 30% contribution in the final year. On April 9th, 2024, Council did approve a 5-year agreement under the existing tax incentive strategy with CADC. However, shortly thereafter, there was an appeal by CADC and the BioAlliance requesting a 10-year extension. The staff did make a recommendation originally to the Economic, Tourism, and Cultural Development Committee to support the 5-year contribution, given we were operating within policy, and the policy currently prescribes a max of 5 years. Thereafter, staff engaged Stiletto Consulting, which is an economic development firm, to assist us evaluating the request and the appeal. That organization recommended a 10-year exemption with modified terms, of which we're prescribing, including clear performance metrics and regular reviews, as I indicated a moment ago. Staff generally agrees with the approach to support this particular file while ensuring that there's accountability and long-term development within the municipality. And if approved, an agreement will be drafted, including the criteria to evaluate over the junctions of which I mentioned. And we'll bring this forward at a future council meeting. It's important to note that the 5-year agreement that was initially approved accounts for $119,000. By expanding to a 10-year incentive, that will take the value to $358,238. So there's some general comments on the file. I know the chair of our committee is here today. He may have something to add as well prior to questions.
Yeah. Thanks, John.
Councillor Bernard.
Thank you, Wayne, and a well-done report here, and there's a lot of things in the report that makes a lot of sense. And one of them is just supporting the high-impact industries, which Biocoms actually is. What I like about it, I'm just going to read off this one paragraph out of the report. By structuring the extension of the temporary graduated suspension of municipal tax with performance milestones, which is what Wayne talked about. Such as job creation targets, completion of sustainable construction practices and sector growth benchmarks, which we haven't been using before, which I think it's great to move towards that in other tax incentives that we give. Shall now can maintain alignment with its fiscal and strategic priorities. Progress reviews at set intervals such as 3 and 5 years can ensure that the BioAlliance is delivering an anticipated economic developments that justify the extension to go to the 10 years, while allowing adjustments based on the actual incomes. So to me, it's something that we definitely move ahead for this particular company, and it is considered a high impact industry. So I definitely would be agreeing with this.
Thank you for those comments, Councillor Bernard. I know in reading the report and the information last night that there has been a lot of work done on the recommendation, and I myself personally, in favor of it. Any other questions, Mayor Brown?
Yeah, Councillor McAleer. I go back to the policy on the tax incentive strategic policy. We changed it to make this accommodation because prior to that, it did not apply to the biotechnology. And so we made that change. This file has been open since 2020. And the bio incubator is a facility that will create other companies, hopefully that will stay within the West Royal Industrial Park or somewhere else in the area, and so it's an incubator for more business to come. Could this tax incentive apply to new companies that come from this bio incubator facility?
Through the chair, Your Worship, you referenced the amended incentive that created a pathway forward for bioscience. In this particular situation, the application was able to advance because CADC was actually added into the past incentive when we amended, and that's a key point moving forward. When they own and operate and they are the leasee, it creates a pathway forward, and that's the wording that has been used in the particular application. Around bioscience, we are likely to have more of these applications moving forward. As you well know, the Accelerator, which is the largest economic development investment in the province of Prince Edward Island, just broke ground, and we have yet to receive an application on that, but I'm sure upon substantial completion, and that an application will be advancing. If you look at the sectors within the economic development scope for the province, and particularly Charlottetown, bioscience is the #1 sector, especially when it comes to FDI, foreign direct investment. Many of the missions through Global Affairs Canada, Invest in Canada, Innovation PEI are all focused around bioscience. So it is a valuable sector to our economy and has lots of potential for growth. So it is a good point that you make, but I am confident that we will receive additional applications moving forward. I should also note that we are also tidying up the tax incentive policy as it stands, so we would be better able to evaluate applications moving forward, which will include some benchmarking in there as we discussed today, but also how we better deal with files that are unique like this current situation.
So, Mr. Chair, just to follow up, and this is my second question. We've identified, we've spoken about this before. We're not a heavy industry manufacturing province because we just don't have the resources or capacity, land capacity. So biotechnology or the biotechnical field is an area that continues to grow. And I keep going back to Regis Duffy, Dr. Regis Duffy with Diagnostic Chemicals Limited. That kept moving. Now you have a company by the name of BioVector with almost 500 employees and I think $1 billion capital or market value or maybe more. So, Wayne, just to go back to this project, I know it's aligned with Charlottetown Area Development Corporation, and it's the BioLines incubator. The facility is almost completed, correct, in terms of construction? So this tax incentive is for that facility, correct? Anything that comes from that could be coming down our way. So are we looking at 5-year, 10-year, or again, the door is open now for tax incentives?
Well, I think in this instance, Your Worship, it was a unique ask. We're stepping outside of policy, going anything beyond 5 years. So thus, we engaged a neutral body to help us evaluate this file. It's consideration that we're going to have to give to the policy moving forward and how we best evaluate similar applications. There will likely be other applications of this nature coming forward in the future. This decision was made on good, sound, evidence-based knowledge versus just reacting. We did a good scan with the consultant of best practices across the country, what other jurisdictions are doing. So this is a unique one-off situation, but as I indicated, we're working with the consultant at looking at coming forward with some new changes to the tax incentive policy, tidying it up, and giving this committee a better tool when we come forward with recommendations.
Councillor Bernard.
And I think I would just add to that, because that's what we had discussed at our committee, with moving from 5-year to 10-year. But I think this is considered a high-impact industry, and I think that's something you look at when we look ahead to this for the 10-year, what impact it will be on the city. And this one has a huge impact. And I think you or Manager of Economic Development talked about it. There'll be a lot of other spin-off companies come from this, which is a lot more, again, tax revenue. The tax revenue that's coming in now, according to this, is over $10 million. So very worthwhile tax forgiveness for the 10 years. Yeah. So thank you.
Wayne, if you don't mind, could you just want to understand, you made the comment earlier about the importance with CADC and the connection. Just if you could help me just understand that a little better.
Sure, Mr. Chair. In this particular application, CADC is the best applicant when you look at the policy and how it aligns with the policy. So the application came through CADC as the owner of the actual asset infrastructure itself, and therefore they are the landlord to the PI BioAlliance. So although at the end of the day, the impact is from the value of the sector, high-yielding sector of bioscience, the contract, the agreement from the municipality will be held directly with the Charlottetown Area Development Corporation.
Thank you. Okay, are we good on, Mayor, Councillor Yankoff?
Thank you. Through the chair to Wayne, if I can. So are we, I'm totally in support of this today. Just wondering then, are you indicating that we will make appropriate changes to the policy that would speak to situations like this? So going forward, there's a little less thrash to this? Is that what we're saying?
Through the chair to Councillor Yankoff, that is essentially it, Councillor. We will ensure that we have a better tool to evaluate in the future, especially with high yielding sectors such as this. There's some other cleanup that we will do as well to the policy, so it'll allow staff to make sound judgment and recommendations to the committee, and then therefore in return, it'll allow the committee to also make good solid decisions with respect to investments in taxpayers' dollars.
So, just, maybe just a question or a comment, expectation on this. This has been had a life now for a while, and it's been, the 5-year, and then 10-year, and we've got, I'd like to think, hopefully good solution here. So is this basically us saying, this, this is our best offer on Rory and the Bio Alliance, right? How do you see this kind of playing out? Any expectation?
Mr. Chair, I would say a couple of things here. So the mayor alluded to one earlier. This file has been around for quite some time. It has been it's been dealt with amongst multiple staff, changing staff and administration. So everyone here today has played a role in getting this back on track over the course of the past few years. And then, of course, we had the pandemic in the midst of there. There's a number of things to consider. The recommendation that we're making today essentially aligns with the request that came forward, looking for a 10-year agreement. The only difference here is that we are implementing benchmarking and metrics that will help us better validate and justify the investment, and to ensure that our decision is sound and that moving forward that things stay in a focused and tracked manner.
No, great, thank you. And the benchmarking, I think, to echo Councillor Bernard's comments, on these, to me, these sorts of things make probably sense for our policy kind of going forward, to have these, rather than kind of one and done, having benchmarks make a whole lot of sense on these sorts of concessions. Thank you. Okay, continuing on. Moved? Oh, sorry. Oh, okay. All right. Resolution moved by Mayor Brown, seconded by Councillor Yankoff, that 10-year tax incentive be approved as discussed. Questions? Support? Okay. All those in favor? All right. Thank you. Thank you, Wayne. Good job. 6B, Transit Depot Design Build Award Report. Manager of Environment and Sustainability, no stranger. She's got Jessica Corkingorl and Anna Keenan are here to present this report. Go ahead, whoever's ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for having us. We're here to speak to the proposed transit depot that would allow our transit system to modernize and prepare ourselves for the future of transit, which we feel is very strong. The City of Charlottetown is being presented with a great opportunity to prepare for transit's future. And there's no doubt in my mind that improved transit is a key to the future of Charlottetown. So what I'll talk about today involves a capital project that is coming in over what the projected costs would be. but the project is still 50% funded through an ISIP funding program. And over the long term, the operational savings that we'll see will pay for this project. So I'd like to start with just a quick review of the history of this project at council, and then I'll kind of get into more of the report. So in 2021, council awarded a contract to WSP to work on the site selection process for the build, an operational and business plan for converting to electric buses, and the preliminary design specs for the depot. In 2022, council approved an application to ISIP for the transit electrification project involving fleet changes and depot construction. In 2022, council approved the purchase of the property on Mount Edward Road for the project. In 2023, council approved a two-step process, step one being an expression of interest, and step two being a request for proposals, where we accepted proposals from 4 different companies to review. And then in 2024, 2025, the proposed budget was outlined in the 5-year capital plan. So the report summarizes the RFP process, where we did receive 4 submissions. This report has gone to the Environment and Sustainability Standing Committee and was moved to council and recommended to stop here at Finance before it goes to council. So the 4 submissions were reviewed, and it was a 2-step review process, with the technical package and envelope being reviewed first, and a minimum score was required to move on to financial review. So 3 of the 4 companies scored high enough to have their financial envelopes opened. And after the assessment, which was done by 3 parties, 2 external, Colliers and WSP, and 1 internal, our city engineer, the recommended award was to go to Wellington Construction, who had the highest score combined of both technical and financial. So their submission was for $15,273,447. And if you look at the staff recommendation line, that means that after the ISIP funding projections, that would mean an increase of just over $5 million in the city's capital budget, but it could be spread over 2 fiscal years the construction of the project would take place in. The project is proposed to begin design work after award. Construction would start in June of 2025, substantial completion by the summer of the following year, 2026. And just to remind everyone here that council did award a resolution to purchase our first 4 battery electric buses. So these go very much hand in hand. So this depot would provide the charging infrastructure and indoor space and maintenance space to service our growing transit service. I would like to outline some risks if we don't proceed, which would include possibly losing the ISIP funding, which was a project planned at reducing our greenhouse gas emissions and working towards net zero. The risk of not building a transit garage to operate our services from, reduction in our promises to commit to net zero goals, and a reduced investment in capital projects that have long-term savings and possibly have higher costs to build if we put it off to do later. We hear from bus manufacturers that they're transitioning out of diesel production in the future. I don't have exact dates on that, but I do know that Nova Bus, our current supplier, has confirmed that in the coming years they will be switching to electric bus production, so it's important we work towards that. And finally, I'll just mention the Cassidys are working with us closely on this project, and like every system that's making this conversion, I just returned from a transit conference in Toronto with national transit agencies and municipalities, and feel strongly that we're heading in the right direction, because that is the trend across the country, and everyone's going through the same successes and challenges. And while the Cassidys have outlined concerns, they're very much supportive of what we're doing, and they did ask that we do the transition slowly so we can adapt and pivot, which the plan does acknowledge that, as we've went from 7 projected electric buses to 4. And in our procurement of the buses, we've made a strong case for training and servicing and support to our operator to make that transition smooth. So I'm just going to pass the mic to Anna for a minute, and she's just going to tack on a little bit of more support in the financial section.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Chair. The financial benefits and environmental benefits of electrification very much depend on how much we use an electric bus and on the lifetime of an electric bus. So with that in mind, I've begun to look at 3 different scenarios for growth. They were a no-growth scenario, a growth to the average level of transit service for a municipality like Charlottetown, and an accelerated growth scenario as was presented in the 10-year public transit plan earlier this year, as well as 2 different lifetimes for electric buses. They can be either 13 years or 16 years, depending on which industry standard you take. Looking at the costs to all levels of government is one way you can look at the lifetime cost savings of an electric bus, or you can also look at the cost savings to the municipalities alone after considering federal and provincial funding coming in. And in all scenarios, in all growth scenarios, the purchase of an electric bus saves municipalities money over the lifetime of that bus, whether it's 13 to 16 years. So purchasing a battery electric bus today, especially under this ISIP funding, can save us anywhere between $91,000 over its lifetime up to $455,000 if we follow an ambitious growth scenario, just due to the reduced maintenance costs and also the reduced fuel costs. That's quite a wide range and is very dependent on the choices that Council would make in the future regarding expansion into evenings and weekends. The net cost to all levels of government is not actually currently a saving in terms of battery electric over a diesel bus. The extra expense ranges anywhere from a fairly modest $14,000 over the lifetime of the bus to $377,000 if you count municipal, provincial, and federal contributions. $300,000 seems like a lot of extra money to invest. And I think it's important to put in context the financial savings next to the carbon dioxide savings. One electric bus will save anywhere between 300,000 litres of fuel and 600,000 litres of fuel over its lifetime. And depending on how much we use the bus, the cost per tonne of CO2 saved ranges anywhere between $7 per tonne and $460 per tonne. And if we are to fully maximise our public transit fleet to deliver the level of service that our 10-year plan recommends, it's at the much lower end of that. And that's a very affordable rate of savings per tonne of carbon dioxide. And I think all of the decisions that we make around fleet electrification and going forward with this depot do need to be assessed in the context of, we are the Environment and Sustainability Department, and the social cost of CO2 is around $300 per tonne. That's the amount of the financial value on the amount of damage that 1 tonne of CO2 emitted into the atmosphere causes. And so by proceeding with electrification, if we also expand our operational service hours, we're getting extremely good value for money at as low as $7 per tonne of CO2 compared to damage levels of $300 per tonne of CO2. So I hope that helps to support Jessica's report.
Councillor Bernard.
Thank you. I think everybody, we've talked about enough at council, and I think everybody's on board to move towards electrification. And I don't think you guys can answer this. One thing that really bothers me about this when I'm reading this is, so we applied for funding in 2022 through the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program and got approved. And the level of approval was 40% federal, 33% provincial, and 26% municipal. So the project hasn't started yet. So I'm assuming the federal and provincial government, it now says here that they're 28 and 23%, and we're at 49, so near 50%. So two other levels of government do not cover any inflationary costs. And I guess the other question is, because by the time this is done, we're going to be well over 50%. Costs are still going to go up in the next 2 years. So is there, I have heard of other applications that have been, I'm not going to say reapplied, but have had conversations with both levels of government and have been able to get the increase up. I don't think this is anybody's fault. It's just a matter of time and inflation. And I think that it'd be nice to get the percentages back up to what they were, as opposed to having the government with the least amount of funding paying more, the most percentage by the time this project's done. Is there any chance of going back to those levels of government and getting that re-looked at for the funding amounts? And maybe, Dan, that may be an answer for you.
I could say a couple things, and if Dan wants to jump in, he's welcome to. But so we did speak to our contact that we deal with through the ISIP funding, and we can always ask, and we definitely will do that. There are no guarantees that that will come back positive. In the agreement we sign, it does say that any overages on the project are the responsibility of the municipality. So definitely we'll ask. The second piece to that is in the RFP, we asked them, every proponent, to outline alternative solutions outside of what we put in the specs that might provide cost savings to the city. So once we award, if and when we award the contract, we can work with the proponent that's hired to look at through the alternative solutions and see if there's further cost savings that we can find.
So Jessica, the $5 million that we're looking for from city government, to me, I don't consider that overages. I consider the overages when the project's going on, there's some cost overruns. But I think that $5 million, to me, should be shared with the other two levels of government. We haven't started the project yet, really.
Yeah, exactly. We can definitely ask, and I can't say what the outcome of that will be.
No, I know.
But
I know.
the,
But there must be a mechanism, though. This must happen, Dan, with governments all the time. There must be a mechanism that you can reapply for the proper funding amounts.
Thank you, through the chair to Councillor Bernard. I think the province's stand on projects that are ongoing in terms of cost overruns has been very firm, and that it basically makes the proponent, or the city in this case, responsible for any cost overruns. So they're managing the project, they're responsible to make sure their costs are managed. In this case, the project hasn't commenced, so there may be an opportunity to have the application reevaluated.
Reevaluate it. That was the word I was looking for. Thank you.
Now, as a practical matter, we are into some time constraints. The tender process for the depot has stretched out considerably because of, I think we had, a large number of inquiries back and forth, and the evaluation process has taken a bit of time. There is a time limit on the price that the proponent, the recommended proponent, has put in place for holding their price. So certainly would support being in touch with the province to see if that application can be reevaluated. What the outcome would be we may not get an answer before we'd like to make a decision on whether we go with the project or not.
And it'd be nice to have that, because the time limit too, I mean, we're in a bit of a time crunch to finish the project in the timeline that they say.
Exactly.
I think it's March 26th.
26. Yep.
So we're not a lot of time on the clock to be able to finish it at that time.
Yeah.
To me, it would be fair to reevaluate this thing and start to trigger off at 25. Because there's been no expenditure, there's been, and the costs just keep going up for us, when the whole idea of is that federal provincial governments help municipalities get these things off the ground and get them going. So Would appreciate, investigating that, for sure.
So in a
Thank you.
nutshell, Councillor Bernard, I guess we're asking, can the ISIP thing be reevaluated? Is that basically what it comes down to? Yeah. Okay. Mayor Brown?
So, Jessica, the purchase of the land, what did we pay for the land? It's 2 million?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it was over 2 million. I believe it was 2.5.
Yeah, so 2.5, but that's not included in this 17 million, right?
Land purchase is not an eligible
So,
expense.
so you have to add that also to the expense of this project, which is the purchase of the land. So 2.5, now we're up to like 17 million. And as Councillor Bernard said, there will be change orders. You know, projects always run into unforeseens, like go down to the Eastern Gateway Big Dig, there's a lot of unforeseens. So we have to take that into consideration. And in terms of reevaluating the ISIP application, if we start building this project before we get a word back, the application process is over. They don't reevaluate when the project starts. So I don't know if we have the time to put a stop on this and wait until you get a reevaluation, because that could, I believe that goes through the provincial secretariat, infrastructure secretary that was formerly with Darlene Rodenizer. I don't know who's there now. So if we're going to do this, ask for a reevaluation, that should start right after this meeting to find out, can we make an application to reevaluate?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, indeed, it would happen quickly. And like I said, I did have preliminary conversations about that. We have made changes to our existing agreement already. The original ask was for 7 electric and 3 diesel, and we switched that to 6 diesel and 4 electric. And the turnaround on that response was rather quick. So, and like I said earlier, construction wouldn't start until next summer. It would be, we're only at around a 30% design right now. So between now and then, it would be design work that would happen.
And Mr. Chair, just another question. The transit shed, it'll not be just for the 4 buses. It's going to be for all the buses. Let's make that clear, because when you said it's a transit shed for electric buses, it's for all buses. Do we know the capacity of 40-seat buses? How many buses can actually be stored or, retained in that structure? Do you have a number?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So just a reminder of the current agreement that we made when we purchased the land is, so the existing office building with 3 bays is leased to the Cassidys for their private businesses. The new building would be dedicated to public transit for the 3 municipalities. In that, there would be 3 service bays to service public transit only buses. So there'd be a separation between private business and public transit. So there would be 3 service bays and 19 parking and storage and charging bays.
Thank you.
I just have general question, and I don't know, be curious what either of you or both of you may answer this going forward. Like, there's a lot of things on the runway here to where we're going. Buses, purchase of buses. We've got something here, about the start progression of a shed. And then I wonder about transit for the province, and where that's gonna, end up, and if and I know you probably can't. I don't know if you have any kind of sense of that. I don't know, but I'm just wondering. Is there any confidence to feel that if we keep going the way we're going here with the, getting the buses on board, starting the shed, and all of a sudden there's, going forward as it relates to the province and the whole transit thing that, did we do things that we probably, anyway, wasn't necessary, or curious if you have any comments on that.
Yeah, sure, I'll say something, and then I think Anna will as well. So all signs point to transit as our future for cities. With population growth, putting all those people in cars is not good for anyone in any way. So transit is our future, and I think if you follow federal, provincial, municipal government, that's what everyone is communicating loudly. We need to work more closely with the province on transit. They are delivering rural transit, we're delivering urban transit, and the province recently hired a transportation-focused person around public transit. So I am excited about strengthening that relationship. So the rural routes feed into Charlottetown. They're also operated by the same operator as us out of our facility. So there's lots of room for furthering that relationship, but I personally don't see any concerns with making good investments in transit.
And I'll just add to that. I'm excited about the potential for improved municipal and provincial collaboration and alignment on transit. With regard to this particular facility, it is very well located to serve the urban transit fleet. There will nearly certainly need to be additional bus facilities if provincial transit expands in the way that would be recommended by best practice public transit across the country. But whether they need to be located downtown or within the proximity to downtown is a different question. If you look at larger cities, they tend to have multiple public transit depots. The benefit of having one located at 7 Mount Edward Road is very high because you have a short headway for buses to travel from the depot to the start of their actual routes, which is a long-term reduction in operating cost. Our current bus fleet, just for context, it has been 18 full-size buses. It's currently 21. We've got a couple that are about to retire. That'll bring it down to 18 or 19 again. So this facility would accommodate the entire current fleet, and over the next 10 years, our 10-year public transit growth strategy includes the purchase of an additional approximately 17 buses, which could be parked outside on the same property. So this facility is sufficient to accommodate the predicted growth of municipal transit, and there would need to be other facilities for coach fleets and provincial transit facilities.
And if I could add one more thing, just out of interest. So I referenced the public transit conference, the national conference that I just returned from. One of the presentations I went to was from the city of Laval, much bigger city, of course. They're in the process of building their transit electrification garage for the same purposes as us. They have 145 fleet. That's the size of their fleet. The cost of their build is $300 million. If you break that down on a per bus cost, their cost to build their garage is twice the cost of what is being proposed here.
Yeah, thanks for coming back to that conference. So was the theme of that conference basically electrification and kind of where we're going as well? Is that predominantly where?
It was about everything transit, from what's a good fare rate for residents to what new technologies are out there, but definitely electrification was a key theme throughout it.
So it'd be nice to know from Laval what the percentages are of funding they're getting from federal and provincial government. Seriously.
And Mr.
Can you, is that something you can find out?
That's public information. That's public information.
Yeah. Okay, Mayor Brown?
Yes, I think Laval is part of the Montreal Transit too, that there's an interconnection, so Laval's just north of the island. It's part of the greater Montreal area. But there's an added value here with this site in Longworth Avenue. I believe Maritime Electric is considering to build a substation where their current facility is just on the south side of the Emmanuel Christian Church, or Emmanuel Christian School. There is a depot right there now. I think they're looking at a substation. So that substation would be a very added value to electrification of our buses there at that site. And at that conference, did they talk about leaning benches in their shelters? Did they? Oh, good.
Okay, does that conclude questions to our transit staff? Okay, thank you, Jessica and Anna. Do
Need a resolution?
need a resolution? Councillor Bernard, move forward, seconded by Councillor Ankoff, that move this forward to council.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you.
6C, our accounting MRSB management letters, going to kind of capture 2 years here, 2023, 2024. Those letters were in your report. Dan, of course, is here to kind of speak to them, and I'm just wondering, Dan, if you kind of can take us through, and I know this, in going through them myself, that there were, a number of, a number of items that were addressed in, in both reports, and I just wonder if you could kind of take us through these and comment on the progressions or things that are changed or things that got to be improved on, if you will. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So in general terms, just wanted to address the context of this letter. So it is the recommendations from the auditor that they've observed some opportunities for improvement in our operations and internal controls that they've experienced during the time that they were here doing the audit of our financial statements. In general terms, I've had the benefit of seeing the management letters for years prior to these two documents. There have been much more extensive letters in the past, so I think it speaks well to the changes that have been made over the last few years in terms of improving the situation. If we look at the letter from the 22-23 financial statement audit, there were a number of items that have been essentially resolved in comparison to the current fiscal year audit. And we can walk through the contents of the letter. It's I believe 3 pages, really two and a bit. But in summary, I think there's no major areas of concern from my perspective, and I think that is echoed by Michelle's presentation, the partner from MRSB that presented the audited financial statements to committee. Certainly happy to have to invite Michelle and Matthew in to speak to committee and/or council if you'd like, but my sense is that there's probably enough information in here that would address or articulate the areas of concern that they've expressed, and a visit may not be necessary, but certainly happy to arrange that if so. To run through, I'm not going to spend any time on the letter from the prior year's audit because many of the items have been addressed, and really this is a forward-looking document in terms of where we are today, what improvements that we can make looking forward. The contents of the letter dated October 8th, purchases, essentially those are the concerns expressed there that the practice of having 2 signatures at each level is not consistently applied. The process of having, for example, if we had $1 million invoice, we'd require 2 signatures from 2 separate officials with signing authority over $1 million. That typically wouldn't be the case in most other institutions. You'd have 2 signatures, but you'd only require 1 signature from someone with that signing authority. So that is something that we would look to address in our procurement bylaw, identify spending authority limits and the number of signatures required. That being said, it is something that our accounts payable folks are keenly aware of and work diligently to ensure that those signatures are in place. But we handle anywhere between 150 and 400 invoices a week, and the odd one slips through without the proper signatures. So. The revenue question relates largely to some of our recreation revenues, our booking system for revenues. We do have some IT limits, technology limits in terms of how that revenue gets recognized. It is a matter that we're aware of. The cost to make that change is not insignificant, and but it is something that we have on our to-do list to try to improve moving forward. Also, police revenues from tickets are only recorded on the basis of when the tickets get paid, so we don't track in any meaningful way the revenue that we're losing from unpaid tickets. And again, there are some technology challenges there as well. Accounts receivable, we don't have dedicated accounts receivable staff for city accounts, but we do have our accounting staff, finance staff are following up as often as they can, but to some extent that is a resource issue. The reporting on accounts receivable balances were somewhat limited, or have been in the past, because of the utility billing system that we've deployed. But we have had in the past few weeks some improvements made in that respect in terms of being able to rebuild accounts receivable balances that, for prior dates. That wasn't possible. We had requested some changes to the software, which had been made. Stephen Burke's identified a few bugs that they're working on, but we continue to do that. Comments with respect to payroll. The auditors made some comments that we've seen significant improvements there. There's some TD1 forms that haven't been completed by employees, but these are minor issues. Inventory, we still don't have any what we would call a perpetual inventory system in our stores that would record inventory as it comes in from suppliers and then have a requisition and tracking of each individual removal from stores. We are considering the potential of bringing stores into finance as a corporate service based on a recommendation from Public Works. But that is something that we'll evaluate over the next few months. And if that was the case, we could perhaps implement. There are some capacities within the financial information, the financial accounting system that we have that we could implement some perpetual inventory methods there. HST returns, as evidenced in the letter, there have been some delays in getting returns filed, some corrections in returns, that is an area that we had some significant deficiencies over the prior years, and I think it's safe to say that significant improvements have been made. So all good points that the auditors have brought up, and all items that we will continue to work on to improve systems and processes and compliance with the procedures that will more clearly be articulated in the procurement bylaw and policies.
Okay.
Happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you. And I know, Dan, you touched on it. The HST, it talks in the audit where the proper amount wasn't claimed and there was an adjustment. The Simmons capital project of $1.5 million. Has that been claimed? Okay. So what I wonder is, usually the auditors just kind of take samples. So is there someone that goes through there to see if there's another significant amount of money that we haven't been claiming? Seeing, because Simmons is just a recent project that's still ongoing, so I wonder how many other rebates may have been missed. That's my first. The other question I had was on the quarterly updates, where they're recommending monthly. Is that an issue for the finance staff?
I'll answer the first question. Thank you, Councillor Bernard, through the chair. The issue of the lack of completeness in terms of HST claims, it speaks to the lack of robust capacity within our finance department, not because of the people that are there, but because of the lack of depth that we have in the team. We spend $180 million a year here, and we have a staff of 8 handling a lot of transactions every year, including the procurement side. We need additional resources to deliver those purchases efficiently and completely. So I think some staffing, both rearranging, realigning some of the responsibilities in the jobs that are currently filled. We don't have any internal audit function currently. That was something that was eliminated with the controller's position a couple of years ago, and an internal control function would address some of these missed items. The auditors would have looked at some of the larger value transactions, to ensure that those would be handled properly. So they kind of went after the big fish, but there's probably a lot of smaller little fish. People make their living.
And I guess
Yeah.
one of my concerns, Dan, is I know when you talk about the resources, but what it's saying here is measures should be taken to ensure staff understand HST implications of various project and expenditures. So it sounds to me like what you're saying is they're not quite understanding what to submit for and what not.
Yes, and again, that does speak to the capacity issues in terms of, having, with a robust procurement function with procurement specialists, they would know ahead of time what items were eligible for rebates, what weren't, and they would budget for those items. Whereas we have good staff that haven't had a lot of training. Most of their training has been, on-site, school of hard knocks, so to speak. So I think by building our capacity both in management with our new manager of finance and the procurement bylaw, and hopefully building our procurement staff as well, some of these issues will be the impact will be reduced because we'll have more capacity in that way.
Okay. And on the monthly? That's the monthly updates.
Yeah, the monthly filing is, it is, because we spend money, we don't collect it a whole lot. Most of our money is stuff that we're getting back from the feds as opposed to remitting. They like monthly remitters if we owe them on a regular basis, but it would improve our cash flow somewhat if we went to a monthly basis. But again, it creates another process that we have to do each month versus once a quarter. So pros and cons to that, but that's certainly something that the manager will evaluate when he gets his fingers in a little deeper come December, January.
Thank you.
Councillor Yankoff.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to echo Councillor Bernard's comments, those were really my 3 key point takeaways from the 2 management letters, the invoices and the signing proper signing of the two signatures. Sometimes the person signing off wasn't even the person who was identified to sign. The HST, identifying the HST inconsistencies in terms of what to collect and when to collect, and then the reconciliation. So really, hopefully, this time next year, we'll be looking at a different management letter, that these three things can be addressed either in our procurement or with new staffing or whatever it is that our Director of Finance says that needs to be done. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I will say, and I don't take any credit for this, but for an institution this size, to have a management letter this concise is actually, I think, something that finance staff can take pride in. They've done an exceptionally good job under a period of great change and high demands, so I think they've done an exceptional job. And I applaud them for it. So, but that being said, we'll continue to dig in and continue to do better in the future.
Thank you. Mayor Brown?
Mr. Chair, so Dan, if I follow up on the 2023, let me just make sure it is, yeah. 2023, page 68. This has been around a couple of times, purchases, as part of our audit testing around purchase and processes. Again, you said that this will be incorporated into our procurement bylaw where there's one or two signatures. And the reason I bring that up because Councilor Bernard and I were around back in the early 2000s when there was an issue of sign off. Remember the auditors come in to say that there wasn't proper, like it wasn't consistent. There wasn't two signatures. So that allowed for the slippage of funding. So that raises a red flag for me. That's a concern for me, and I know it was addressed in 2023. And I think maybe you went into this a little bit. Revenues, as part of our audit testing the utility revenue process, we noted that on-processed bills, which are exceptions within the automatic billing process. I think you said that has to be. That's a mechanism we have to improve on, or there's going to be a cost to that. And the other, which is I think Councillor Bernard has brought up before, and I think maybe obviously it has been addressed because in 2024 it's not listed, but capital financing. The last paragraph, during the 2023 fiscal year, the city drew funds from its existing line of credits to finance various capital projects, including capital projects approved under the Canada Community Building Fund. However, the city had sufficient funds within the Canada Community Building Fund restricted bank account to cover these expenditures without drawing on a line of credit. So I think that it's not in this year's letter, so whether it's something they didn't test this year, but I know Councillor Bernard has brought that up because how much money do we have remaining in that fund that we could draw down on instead of drawing down on our line of credit? So just those three questions, if you want me to just go from third to first.
Sure. So the CCBF fund account, the dollars in that account were not touched, but the way our banking works is the Royal Bank groups all of our accounts or our current accounts. So our current account might be overdrawn by $7 million. And we might have a $12 million balance in our CCBF account. So they would continue to pay us net interest on our deposit balance overall. Although if we didn't have that CCBF account to offset our overdraft and our operating, we would be in an overdraft situation and we would have to pay interest on that. What we have done in the past fiscal year is we have placed a long-term debt. We've drawn on long-term debt. So we have additional long-term debt financing that's moved that operating overdraft to long-term debt on our balance sheet. So, and also has gone to assist to fund some of our infrastructure projects. So that's that piece. The unprocessed revenue, I think, was really what was spoken to in the previous management letter is exceptions that were kicked out of the billing system for the water meters. So we have folks that do a drive-by and read the meters, the water meters, and that gets brought back and sucked into the accounting system and generates an invoice. A number of errors or just mismatches happen with each read, and those hadn't been followed up on a regular basis. So it's kind of an exception situation where the staff are doing a better job now at following up on those exceptions that get kicked out, and some operational changes are being made so that the fewer of those exceptions happen with each. I think we do 2 separate readings every 2 months, different batches. Yep.
And just to follow up, Dan, I know, yeah, we do get interest paid on the savings, any money that's in the account, but I'm sure you're quite aware that the interest that we get on savings is a lot less than the interest that we pay on loans and line of credit. So if that money's there, that fund is there, let's draw it down. And you know, again, these questions were asked in the past about how much was remaining in that Canada Community Building Fund, CCBF. I think, you know, those figures have to be more accurate going forward, and I know they will be. And as for HST paid and HST received, so when we apply for HST, it's a 15%. We don't get the full 15% on the HST that we can apply for under input tax credit.
It through the chair to your worship, it depends on the
Purchase.
On the purchase. So if we're purchasing items for our rink, and this is, you know, it's a bit of a specialty, so I only know general aspects of it. But if we have a revenue generating asset, i.e. the rinks that are renting ice time, we are able to claim a full 15% input tax credit on some of those purchases. If it's general purchases for the city that don't relate specifically to a revenue generating asset, which we would charge fees, HST, on our ice rentals, then those would be restricted to a 5% input tax credit from the feds. If they were capital purchases and only had the 5% input tax credit, if they're capital purchases, currently we also qualify for a 10% municipal capital expenditure grant from the province, which, although it is an HST, it approximates that value. So on the capital side, we don't get stung too hard on that.
So the reason I mention that, Mr. Chair, because HST is a complicated tax system, and it's only been complicated more by the recent announcement of the federal government to offset HST for the next couple of months on certain products. So I don't know how that's going to play into the vendors of these products. And I like to say that in conclusion, I think this is a great opportunity for the city residents to see I call this is our municipal audit, municipal auditor report. And I think it's great for residents to understand like some of the issues that we have in accounting and slotting those numbers in the right areas so that it's an open and transparent system. So thank you very much to you and the staff.
Yeah, thank you. And Dan, just on the inventory metric, how, like I said, as you've expressed, you know, staff and shortages, and just where is that on the maybe to-do list, or because it is probably an important piece. You know, think of the, you know, as it says in the report, you know, the theft piece, to get some kind of metric on that. Any idea?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. At this stage, we're not aware of any major losses that we're experiencing. But when you don't control the inventory and you don't track it, you don't really know what your slippage is. So that's you know, part of the benefit. And it's not just about slippage, but it's about, you know, purchasing the right quantities and the right time, so you're not carrying a whole lot of inventory. If you track it perpetually, you know roughly how many you go through in a 3-month process, which is or three-month time period, which is how long it takes you to buy another batch of flagging jackets. So it just allows you to manage your inventory better. It's not just about loss because of theft. It's, theft happens everywhere, but it's just about managing it better, allocating costs to specific programs so that, if it's a police using toilet paper to oversimplify it, that police gets charged for it versus it just going to a toilet paper expense.
Okay, thank you for that, Dan. Don't see any lights, so we'll conclude on that agenda item. And we'll go to 6D, your capital forecast report, Dan, and it's this is a report, as I met with you earlier in advance of the meeting. It's something that we didn't have a look or didn't have for us last year, so we appreciate just going through this. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So this is a high-level review of our what we anticipate the capital spending will be this year. You're well familiar with the budget process that we went through in February and March. At that time, we identified that we hope to spend about $84 million gross without considering the funding piece. And based on management estimates from each department head through over the past couple of weeks. On November 19th, all the numbers were in, and management's best estimate at this point is that we'll spend about $70 million, so about $14 million less than we had budgeted for. Many of those expenses will be deferred into another year. If you look at environment and sustainability, the budget was for 6.1 and the forecast now is at 3.5, but we know that there will be additional bus purchases that'll get kicked out into next fiscal year. So the next stage in this process is for the department heads to build their capital budget ask for this coming fiscal year and the four years after that. So that's their 5-year capital budget plan. And that's something that the department heads are working on currently, and we hope to meet as a group collectively in the next couple of weeks to review those as a group and hopefully get a draft capital budget to council.
Thank you for that, Dan, or Councillor Bernard.
I'm just letting you know, I do have to go. I'll have to head back, so. Okay, thanks.
Okay. Councillor Bernard has to leave the meeting.
I have a question.
Mayor Brown?
Mr. Jenkins, so if I look at the year-to-date, it's about $26 million. So we have 4 months left coming into winter. Some of those projects will slow down, especially in water and wastewater. So if you had to project, what do you think? 30, 35 million?
70.
Yeah, but we won't spend the whole 70.
That's the management team's best estimate, and those are estimates from each department head. So their estimate of what we will actually incur in this fiscal year is the $70 million number.
And the year-to-date is 26 million?
Yes, but if you look at, public works, street rehabilitation, we've spent 11 million, but we know we've spent that on one project. So there's invoices yet. So the year-to-date is really just paid bills.
I know.
It doesn't
I know
reflect that work that's been ongoing. I signed a couple $1 million worth of invoices last week. That wouldn't have been reflected in that.
Yeah, if you look at past capital budgets, where if you're looking at 70 million of 84 million, you're almost 80% of the budget or more. That's the first time I've seen that in a number of years.
Thanks, Your Worship, through the chair. So, if you recall, in the last capital budget process, we talked about the gap between what we thought what we hoped to spend, or what the projects that we had approved, and what we could reasonably deliver. And we took a different approach that we focused on what we could actually spend in the current fiscal year. So that 84 million that we budgeted for was down from well over 100 million where we started. So this different approach is really kind of addressing to narrowing that gap between what the capital budget spoke to and what we actually were able to spend in the fiscal year. So there's still a bit of a gap, but we're getting closer to being able to deliver on the plan that we laid out.
So the debt service that we put aside, if we use the formula that you proposed last year, $100,000 in every million, so we have about 7 million set aside for debt servicing, if we spend the 70 million?
Yes, well, we should have 8.4 if 10% on 84, because the budget would be based on the expected spend. But there is some funding that would come off of that. I think our net spend at the capital budget time was 55 million.
Right.
Yeah, so there'd be about 30 million to come off of that, and we didn't narrow it to include what additional partner funding would be applicable to that $70 million expected spend.
Okay, so what do we have set aside for debt servicing? 8.4 million or 5.5 net? What do we have?
It would be, well, we have existing debt, of course, so these are just new purchases. So I'd have to look at the budget, but it would be in excess of 5.5 because we have $130 million of debt as of the
I
last
understand
financial
that.
statement. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Good. Councillor Yankoff, you're good? Okay. Thank you for that, Dan. It was a good metric, and closing the gap's also good. So great job to you and the finance team. So we go to 6E, update to the committee and the operational matters of interest. Dan, if you could kind of maybe essence of time, whip through this, and we'll get to item 7.
So the first item is the legal opinion on the J. Frank Macaulay Park pathway procurement. So on September 10th, we were asked to get a legal opinion on whether or not the council had the authority to send the project back to public tender. The opinion that we received, so administration requested and received that. The opinion that we got supported council's decision to proceed to public tender, stating that proceeding in a non-competitive manner for a contract value greater than $25,000 is a discretionary decision of council. So they had full authority to do that. The opinion also indicates a hopefulness that the procurement bylaw being drafted may provide greater guidance to council on what circumstances may warrant a non-competitive procurement process. And the public tender for this project is underway as directed by council back at that time. No real update on the procurement bylaw. It's proceeding. Budget planning for 25-26, pretty much as was laid out. We have thrown in an additional public open house that was held on November 19th. It was relatively lightly attended, but it was a good process for department heads to get their head around where their budgets were and what their priorities were for the coming year. Provincial funding negotiations, November 8th, we did provide, in conjunction with the City of Summerside, a written summary of our key needs and funding issues facing the cities. And along with that, requested some increases to the tax credit revenue for the basic services of street maintenance and policing. To date, we haven't received a response from that, but we're hopeful to hear something before too long. And in terms of staffing, as you're all aware, we have been fortunate to secure Mr. Lane Pino as our new manager of finance. He starts on December 9th. Nancy Milligan, who had been in our utility finance team, has accepted the position of administrative assistant for the Department of Finance. So this may be Tamara's last meeting, pitch hitting, and I do want to take the opportunity to thank Tamara for doing that. It's not in her job responsibilities, so she's gone above and beyond the call of duty to backfill. So appreciate that. And interviews for the accounts payable clerk are ongoing and progressing well. That's all I have. The monthly financial report was referred to a little earlier, and the tender report are there. Happy to answer any questions on those if you have any.
Thank you, Dan. Mayor Brown?
Mr. Chair, again, the timeline for the procurement bylaw is ticking. So again, this issue of J. Frank Macaulay Parkway is just another example of we need to get that framework in place. And also for the signing authority on checks or payables going out. And again, it provides that equal playing field for all bidders. So I'm glad to see that we are moving ahead on the procurement bylaw, hopefully within the next 3 to 6 months. That's what we're looking at. And if I could say one thing about the provincial funding negotiations, so the city of Summerside and city of Charlottetown have submitted their proposal on what would be an equitable revenue sharing between the province, what they collect and what we receive from the services we provide. FPEIM submitted a proposal through, I think, MRSB. So those proposals are now in front of, I think, Christine McKinnon at the Department of Municipal Affairs, Housing, Municipal Affairs and Land Use, and Finance. So in speaking to Mayor Dan Kutcher this morning, he is pushing forward to get a political meeting with both cities, Charlottetown and Charlottetown, with hopefully the Minister of Finance, Christine McKinnon, who's the director, or I should say the Minister of Housing, Municipal Affairs and Land Use, Mr. Myers, and also with the Office of the Premier. So hopefully we can move that quickly to get that work on that political front. So both fronts are being pushed to get something done, because, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Jenkins, I think, you know, the budget process is going on right now in the House. They're looking at their expenditures. So when the House closes in mid-December, you know, there will be a lot of parts of the budget that are already completed. So hopefully we can get a meeting prior to the House closing.
Just to clarify, Mayor Brown, in relation to Mayor Kuchar, so Mayor Kuchar has initiated and in tandem with the city?
We're both reaching out. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, no lights, so that that concludes 6E. So go to item 7, and Tamara, if you're ready, motion to move into a closed session as per section 119(1)B of the Municipal Government Act of PEI. Information received in confidence which, if disclosed, would likely be prejudicial to the municipality or parties involved. Confederation Center of the Arts, potential land purchase. Are we